Hi, everyone, and thank you for having us today. So I am Rachele, and I am the collections assistant at the Jewish Museum of London. And as you've just said, today we're going to be talking about the Inclusive Judaism Project. And today I'll be joined by my colleague, Eliana. Eliana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Eliana. I am a learning manager at the Jewish Museum London. Thank you for having us.
Right, great. So before we start talking about the Inclusive Judaism Project, we just wanted to kind of introduce you to the Jewish Museum of London, what we do, who we are, and most importantly, how we do it. So the Jewish Museum of London tells the story of the history and heritage of the Jewish people in Britain. And as well as teaching about British Jewish history, the museum also aims to celebrate the contribution of minority communities for the enrichment of society and to represent and reflect on what it really means to be Jewish today. So the way we do this is through temporary exhibitions and displays which reflect on themes of migration, family, faith, and culture. And we also have an extensive learning program aimed to schools and teachers, as well as events which involve outreach sessions, tours, virtual or workshops, which allow us to reach audiences outside of London. Now, our research program is used by both professionals in the museum and heritage sector, as well as academics and the general public who are interested in exploring the history of the Jewish community in London, or who simply wish to find out more about their family's history, for instance. So it's not necessarily an academic environment only. And yeah.
So now we'll move to talk specifically about the Inclusive Judaism Project. So just so we're all on the same page, we just wanted to share the overarching aim, which is to increase understanding of Judaism in Britain and to raise awareness about contemporary British Jewish community in all of its vibrancy and diversity. So this aim, as you can see, fits well with the museum's mission and vision. So this project started in 2021. It started with the title Teaching Inclusive Judaism. It was funded by Cullum St Gabriel's Trust, this kind of first part of the project. And it had three parts to it. So the first part was building relationships with the Jewish community to collect diverse Jewish images. The second part of it was, alongside that, creating a teacher resource, which is our Inclusive Judaism Image Library, which can be found on our website. And this would be containing the collected images from the community that teachers can then access and download in their classrooms for free. So you can see a screenshot of this on the right-hand side of the screen. The third part was designing CPD sessions for teachers, providing them with the language, with the knowledge and the tools to be able to really use those images in their classrooms and giving them the confidence to teach an authentic representative Judaism in their classrooms, basically. So we knew that teachers needed support finding authentic, inclusive images, but that also fit curriculum themes. And we wanted to ensure truly inclusive representation of Jewish communities, because when you Google the word Jewish or Judaism, you might perhaps only get one type of image. And this type of image might be perhaps representing the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, and perhaps it might mainly be white passing men. Whilst these images are very, very important, absolutely, for representing that community, for sure, but what we wanted to do was just create a resource that actually provided teachers with a broad representation of the contemporary British Jewish community. And this matches the values of the museum, since we aim to represent the whole of the Jewish community in the UK, in all of its intersectionality, in all of its diversity. And as kind of we started this project as more of from a learning lens in the learning team. So as museum educators, we kind of understood curriculum links for different key stages, and this influenced the way that we collected images, and we decided that the key themes to collect that kind of linked with the curriculum was festivals, life cycle moments, synagogue life practice, which kind of includes prayer and ritual clothing as well. And so on the screen as well, you hopefully be able to just see a few of the project highlights from our first year. So we managed to contemporarily collect multiple images, mainly kind of the community surrounding those images, kind of London based. And these were used, kind of shown on our image library, but they were also used across our programming at the museum as well. So in galleries and tours and beyond. And we managed to create an online image library and portal with inclusive videos, resources, and more. And we also provided hundreds of teachers with resources and confidence on how to teach inclusive Judaism with our CPD sessions, which reached over 6,000 students and 500 teachers in training in England, Wales, and Scotland.
Now, so in this slide, you can see some of the images that we've collected during the first round of the project. And one of the images that speak most to us is that of Sophie and Jessica's wedding, which is the image on the bottom right-hand side of the slide. Now, the wedding was celebrated at West London Synagogue in 2021. And as you can see, the couple is represented standing under the huppah during the ceremony, and it's dressed in traditional Jewish style. Now, this was one of the first images to enter the collection as part of the Inclusive Judaism Project, and it's been used in many different ways, featuring in our displays and the image library that Eliana mentioned before. And the photograph celebrates a moment of joy and of union between two people, regardless of their background.
And these images, And these images, you can see the curriculum links within them. So, for example, kind of the things that are highlighted earlier. So, ritual clothing, festival celebrations, and life cycle events. And yes, it's whilst the inclusive part of the images collected, might not be at the forefront of conversation. The curriculum links would be more so. What this does actually is then normalizes the diversity within Judaism by focusing mainly on curriculum themes. Yeah. And so just this slide is literally just to give a kind of bit more of example how we kind of impact the impact of this in the teacher community, empowering them to teach an inclusive Judaism in their classrooms, kind of by attending our CPD sessions. So in the first year, confidence levels after attending were quite high, and the resources, which included the image library, were voted as extremely useful. And this slide is just to kind of give an example of comments from teachers following sessions, which highlight the importance and the impact of the project within the teacher community. Teachers just don't have time to go looking for resources. Very, very stretched. Lots of we're might all be kind of aware of that, people, learning teams who work with teachers. So it's just really important. It just highlighted how important it was for us to literally directly give teachers this resource readily available, so that they can use that as part of their teaching in classroom. And just to kind of give you a little bit of a closer look at the image library itself, if you clicked on an image on the image library, what that page would look like. And this is really, the image library is our community voice. It's part of the reason why this is such a valuable resource for teachers, because it represents kind of an authentic living Judaism. And it also empowers the Jewish community, since we represent them in their own words. We'll never interpret images on people's behalf. And this kind of starts with the collection process of collecting those images. As part of the collecting process, we ask the donors to kind of to give us information to interpret their own images. So they'll describe their chosen image. They'll also kind of tick which curriculum link that they think their image refers to, and kind of ask them questions like, why is this image important to you? How does this image reflect your Jewish identity? And what does Judaism mean to you? And you can see example of those questions here on the right hand side. And all of the writing underneath those questions will be directly from the form that they fill in. So we'll never paraphrase or anything like that.
So the second stage of the project began in 2022, and between 2022 and 2023, the Inclusive Judaism Project became a sort of collaborative contemporary collection project with the museum's learning and collection team, and we began collecting inclusive stories tour. Now, our aim with the tour was to give a platform to represent marginalized Jewish identities, refocusing on the relationship between power, images, and the power and the power of representation. The second aim was to strengthen existing relationships with members of the Jewish community and creating a safe space where people could share their stories and their images with us. So we've traveled around the UK to host contemporary collection workshops, which obviously put the community first, which is one of the reasons why we decided to um, enter their homes really instead of having them coming to us. And we've collected over 200 images in over the last year. Now, in the next slide, you can see some of the organizations and the community that we partnered with. So we went from Orthodox synagogues in Birmingham to liberal synagogues in Brighton, from Black and Jewish networks to LGBTQ plus international forums, as well as student societies, youth clubs. And as I mentioned, we've collected over 200 images. Now, accessioning these images into a collection was one of our biggest challenges, because we wanted to ensure a truly inclusive representation of the Jewish community in order to make our collection relevant both now and in the future. So we began wondering why photographs and what is about images that speak to us and that it's particularly relevant to our collection and to the project. Now, the first answer was Eliana has already kind of touched upon it, in the sense that obviously images are quite direct and it's an immediate tool in which you can communicate a message, and it's quite easy for teachers to be able to use them. But there's obviously more to that. Now, our collection is made up of about 41,000 objects, and approximately 25% of our collection is actually made up of photographs, whether these are digital images or actual photographs. And we've got nearly 11,000 photographs in our collection. So, although we have so many photographs, most of them, they represent the Jewish community and the Jewish culture in black and white, and as we can see in these images from the past. So one of the first challenges that we faced was realizing how much our collection was lacking, not just in terms of contemporary images or images that represented the community today, but also in terms of the terminology and the vocabulary that we had in place to describe the community, to describe Jewish culture, as well as, in a sense, resistance, perhaps from members of the community who didn't really think that their voices were important, who really didn't think that their images were relevant, and who in a way also didn't understand what was the purpose of collecting digital images, because this project focuses on digital photographs. So we decided to approach each community and each organization by presenting images and objects that we already had in our collection that were related to their history, their mission, and their values, alongside other images that we thought could inspire conversation around the themes of inclusivity and normativity. So if we move into the next slide. So this is an example from our workshop with St. Albans Masorti community. Now, the image on the left is a recent acquisition, and it's a photograph of two guests at a black and white photograph of two guests at a Jewish couple's wedding in 1966, which was donated in 2022 by the couple's daughter. Now, the image has nothing to do with inclusivity or with inclusive Judaism per se, but the people who are represented in it, they do have to do with it, because the image focuses on two guests, one of whom is Rabbi Louis Jacobs, who's the founder of the Masorti movement. And maybe Eliana can explain a bit more about the movement.
So yeah, Masorti Judaism is a stream of Judaism. It's very closely linked to modern Orthodox Judaism, traditional Judaism in a sense, with a kind of modern egalitarian lens. So, for example, in synagogue services, you'll have kind of female leadership as well as male leadership within the synagogue service, and that's just kind of one example of how it manifests in the practice.
Thank you. So the images that we see on the right were donated after our workshop, and they represent the community today as told by its members and using their own words to describe what Judaism means to them, and also what relationship do they entertain with its past and present history. And whilst visiting other community spaces, we also noticed that some of the words such as community, legacy, pride, and tradition came up over and over again. And they were mentioned by different peoples coming from different backgrounds, different ages, as well as different strands of Judaism. So we decided to incorporate this vocabulary into our terminology list, which we use to describe the collection and which has been updated as part of the audit project of the collection. Something else that we also noticed whilst doing these workshops was how the vocabulary, some or part of the vocabulary that we had in use and that we used to describe the identity of the Jewish people was actually misrepresenting and misleading. So, for instance, the word Mizrahi Jew, which literally means Eastern Jew, and which often refers to Jews of Arab land, was commonly used as a derogative term with a kind of negative connotation because of issues of Orientalism, which obviously is the um, appropriation and misuse of Eastern culture and Eastern tradition by the Western culture to kind of support white supremacy narrative. And this leads me to our next slide.
So we had worked with Black and Jewish individuals to kind of collect images because we really wanted to create, or in the starting to create a Black and Jewish network, making sure that we're working with underrepresented communities who may not have found a space to express their identity in the past. We had an initial event for this network, and many people gave feedback and were interested in different ways to get involved, perhaps become part of a Black and Jewish network, perhaps freelance opportunities with the museum, and interested in donations to the project, whether that be images or objects and things like that. So in terms of going forward with this and what we hope to achieve with the Black and Jewish network is a space and format for the Black and Jewish community so that they feel comfortable, as we're aware that they may not have felt this way historically in traditional Jewish spaces. And there's still gaps both in our collection and in our understanding of the history of these communities. So we need to ask ourselves the question, what can we do to empower their stories? How can we best to represent their historical and contemporary presence among British Jews? And so this project, we really, the dissemination of it has been quite widespread. One of our images has been shown on CBeebies. I'll just quickly go back and show you this one here of Michael blowing the shofar. This happens during Rosh Hashanah, during the Jewish New Year. And I think that was a couple of years ago now that it was shown on CBeebies, but just to kind of show you kind of the impact of this project, but also there are, different sectors that we're sharing this project within. So the religious education and worldview landscape, the Jewish community itself, obviously, and then the museum sector as well, presenting at conferences. And Rachele, I'll pass over to you to finish.
Yeah, so really this project has kind of gone beyond our reach in a sense. And the next stage probably would be directed towards empowering different sectors, as Eliana mentioned, education, museum, community, and how can we best serve their needs, as well as being able to contribute towards an inclusive understanding of Judaism today. And this is our project. Thank you.